Joining me live now, Behnam Ben Taleblu, who's a senior director of the Iran program at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He just wrote a Wall Street Journal op-ed about this very topic. He joins me live right now from Washington. Thanks so much for being with us. When President Trump says help is on the way, what does he mean?
Well, great to be with you, Alex. It's really at this point right now an open question. There's been commentary, I think about 48 hours ago, that the president was going to threaten tariffs against countries that would trade with the Islamic Republic, as well as with the United States. Conversely, we're having this conversation against the backdrop of 2025, where there was a military defeat. Last year, the U.S. took out the regime's crown jewel of its nuclear program, and there was maximum pressure sanctions. But the X factor here is, how is that going to affect the average Iranian protester? How is whatever kind of help the president can bring to bear going to put wind beneath the wings of the average Iranian protester here? And even if that does move into the military domain, how can military action or kinetic action pave the pathway forward for Iranian protesters? And lastly, the real question back in Washington is, how can the president nest whatever he does, economic, political, military, with respect to Iran, back into a larger Iran policy?
So answer your own question. How can it help?
Well, first, it actually requires having a theory of victory. Just recently, and I think this is the first time that the president articulated this, he said that it's all about winning. I mean, he may have said this before, but with respect to the Islamic Republic, his end game was winning. That might mean actually flipping the script on the world's foremost state sponsor of terrorism. That might mean actually being able to empower the Middle East's most pro-American and most pro-Israeli population in the heartland of the Muslim world. But that actually means dispensing with some of the a lockout or freeze-out effect of our conversation here in this town about regime change, about providing meaningful support to the Iranian protesters, particularly on the cyber side. Getting that country back online is key. Iranians have been dying in the darkness over the past 5.5, 6 days. Upwards of several thousand, as you mentioned, have been killed. There's reports I've seen just recently as high as 12,000. But that means fundamentally the end state has to be pushing past an Islamic Republic of Iran, because we can't get out of the Middle East. We can't deal with great power competition so long as we keep getting sucked back into cycle of violence after cycle of violence, because the arsonist is lighting a bunch more fires in the Middle East.
You know, President Trump has repeatedly warned against killing protesters. It's clear been a whole lot of protesters that have been killed. Now there's this threat of hanging protesters, which again, President Trump is pushing back on. Is there any difference between hanging somebody and killing them in the streets? And does the U.S. sort of risk lack of credibility if after warning about killing protesters, the U.S. doesn't do anything?
Well, I don't think this is the U.S. moving the red line here, but the fact that the regime has been killing protesters and now the regime is moving forward to hanging protesters means that at least rhetorically they were not deterred by those threats. I, for one, think, given President Trump's track record on Iran, they should really have a wake-up call here, given that 6 years ago this month, Trump pulled the trigger against the regime's chief terrorist, Qasem Soleimani, and just 6 months ago, President Trump took out the regime's major nuclear installations. Moving forward, however, it's an open question as to, again, how the president can put wind beneath the wings of Iranian protesters. If, for example, there's targeting of what's left of the regime's nuclear facilities, protesters could end up going home. So again, it's all going to be about acting in a way that is actually seen, and perhaps most importantly and acutely felt as leveling the playing field between the protesting street and the repressing state. And that's the real question. It's not, is it about military intervention or economic intervention or sanctions or diplomatic pressure, is how do you actually meaningfully support Iranian protesters?
And lastly, it's been so hard to communicate with people in that country. I know you're well connected in that country. What are you hearing from people, if anything at all, on the ground right now?
Well, just about 12 to 14 hours ago, for the first time in about 5+ days, landlines, again, had somewhat been unblocked. There were calls, a lot of calls, I have to actually admit, going out of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Naturally, I will not divulge the calls of friends and acquaintances and what have you, contacts here, but I will tell you this, that many were not going to be speaking as freely because they rightly assumed that the Islamic Republic was going to be listening in on those calls. But what I have to tell you, looking in at the video, the imagery, the dribs and drabs that we get that still makes its way to social media, that still makes its way to some popular Persian language messaging applications, one can't help but feel a sense of respect and pride for the bravery of the Iranian people, who for 17 plus days now are going up against not just an internet blackout, but against a national security state armed to the teeth. So whatever it is that the president is going to do, it's going to have to meaningfully level the playing field between the state and the street, because the population is fed up and tired.
Yeah, and unfortunately, far too many of them have lost their lives in this fight as well. Behnam Ben Taleblu, thank you so much for sharing your perspective. Appreciate it.
Thank you.